Hello and welcome to Real Watchers Movie Club. I'm Garrett.
And I'm Kevin.
And Real Watchers Movie Club is the show where we pick a movie every week and discuss it just like a book club. On today's show, we're covering the animated psychological thriller Perfect Blue. Our thoughts and more coming up on Movie Club. Released in 1997, Perfect Blue was directed by Satoshi Kon and stars Junko Iwao, Rika Matsumoto, and Shiho Niyama. Sorry for any mispronunciations of those names. A retired pop singer turned actress's sense of reality is shaken when she's stalked by an obsessed fan and seemingly a ghost of her past. It currently has a 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd and is ranked number 54 on its top 250. Before we dive into our thoughts, we do want to issue a quick spoiler warning, though. We are going to be discussing everything that happens in this movie, from the littlest spoiler to the biggest one. And there's a lot to talk about in this movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, I believe it is playing on Shudder, or you can rent it anywhere you can rent movies on. Stay tuned to the end of the show, though, so you can see what film we're watching next week, so you can watch it before the episode comes out. All right, Kevin, so this week was my turn, and I had chosen one of my favorite movies. It's actually on the recent video on the channel, Top 150 Films That Remind Me Why I Love Film, and that is Perfect Blue, of course, as we've talked about in the intro for this show. I was so excited for you to see this, A, because you're also a fan of Japanese animation, but I had not known whether or not you'd actually seen any of Satoshi Kon's work, because it is truly inspiring to a lot of popular filmmakers out there. So I was really excited for you to check this. Had you ever, besides what I had told you about it, had you heard about the movie before?
I'd heard the title of the movie, but I never knew the synopsis of the movie. So
totally fair. So was this film surprising in what it shows?
I need to rewatch this film because it's just a mind. It's a mind blaster, pretty much. Because we'll get into it. But I need to rewatch it.
All of Satoshi Kon's work is mind-boggling like this. Like this film, and I'll just get out of the way. This film is the inspiration for a film called Black Swan, which had Natalie Portman in it, about a ballet dancer who goes through a similar situation. That movie owes a lot to this film, and I believe Darren Aronofsky did say, who is the director of Black Swan, said that he was inspired by this movie. Likewise, Satoshi Kon also has another movie which is very good called Paprika. And Paprika was the inspiration for Inception, or at least part of the inspirations for Inception. So Satoshi Kon, very inspiring filmmaker, kind of like Akira Kurosawa in a way. And this film, we've already given a spoiler warning. This film is a mindfuck, like you said. The reveals of everything that happens in this film are just insane, particularly the version of herself that she sees is nuts. And what was your first reaction to that kind of that bombshell of a reveal?
I wasn't expecting it, but I kind of was wondering where her, I guess it's her assistant or something, Rumi, I think is her name. And I was like, where is she throughout this whole movie? Because she played a big part in the first half of it, but then wasn't in the second half. And then when the reveal happens, I'm like, oh, that makes total sense, because of how jealous she is that she just left the group to try to pursue her own status. So it was not understandable, but it's very real life how some people react to actors going into music, or musicians going into acting and stuff like that.
Sure. And if you think about it too, right, it is very realistic in the way that those artists kind of process the emotions and the kind of things that they go through when making a giant career change like that, the uncertainty, the devotion or less devotion or whatever to the role. The entire sequence with her getting assaulted is very hard to watch. The sexually assaulted scene is very hard to watch. But then her immediate mental thing at the very end is oh, we're gonna do it again, right? Or whatever. I don't remember exactly what she said. But was that what you wanted? And it was oh man. it's just great. And then it's also interesting too because the stalker kind of scenario, the obsessed fan,
That's
is
it's weird. I thought I would see more of him in this movie.
yeah, but it's actually more about the assistant,
Yeah, and
which is
I kind of like that because I'm like, okay, when is the stalker gonna get involved? Because we just see him on his computer the entire time. He never really gets involved until like the third act.
yeah.
To actually like physically do something. But the movie always wants you to see it as he's the one that's doing all of this, which is really good because you don't see the twist coming at the end.
No, yeah, and it's just it's also like creating not false expectations, but it's like diverting your attention away from like what the true
Hmm.
story is, and it's so brilliantly told
Hmm.
that like you're like, oh, this is just an obsessed fan story, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, no, this is something completely different, and I like how the story uses both like her what you think is inner turmoil, but it's actually the assistant, and then the fan to like torture her almost. Like it's this movie is basically the closest thing I know we have to like a anime horror film. Like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a horror movie. There are definitely horror aspects to it. I mean, the design of the obsessed fan is
Hmm.
definitely creepy. But like other than that, it's definitely more of a suspense thriller kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Very much more psychological, which I think this is one of those films that I always recommend to people who are maybe like the recommendation of like a Ghibli movie wouldn't satiate the kind of viewer that they are. Like,
Hmm.
you have people who are into like true crime and stuff like that, or like darker kind of storylines and TV shows. And I think this movie is a really good way to kind of show them that like yeah, anime is not all schoolgirls and like tentacles, and like it's for lack of a better term, right, it is something, a true like medium to tell
Hmm.
stories that we just don't get here.
Exactly. And then, but I do like the aspect of um how she literally had to start over, even though she was a famous pop star, which was kind of
Mhm.
cool because you don't get to see that kind of career change a lot of the time when someone
Yeah.
goes from a musician to a pop star. Usually it's then like, okay, they're in this movie, but this one, she's a struggling
Yeah.
actress, which you don't see that, which I really, really liked to see the struggles of her. And then the struggles of her mental state was really, not inspiring, but like real life.
No, for sure. And I think that that just plays a lot more into the psychological situation that she's going through, right? Like, was this the right decision?
Hmm.
Did I do this correctly? Like that is it plays into it so much more. And again, it creates more avenues for that to be exploited by her assistant or in a sort of third party way by the obsessed fan, right?
Hmm.
So it's just again, it's just brilliantly kind of worked in. Changing topics though, or change like kind of a 180. I do really want to talk about the animation of this movie. It's gorgeous.
For
I mean,
for an 80s animation, yeah, it's pretty
97,
good. Oh, 97, basically 80s, but yeah. Um,
not by
no, oh, 97. I heard 79.
that's
um,
completely different, but
I
yeah,
know. Um,
it's more like a 2000s anime, not an
but
80s one.
it's very it was very colorful, but it was still dull at the same time during those intense parts, which I really liked, because some anime is usually really colorful and it will tone it down a little bit, but this takes extremes to when she's in her hit her idol phase. She's wearing pink and white and everything like that, and when she's getting having her mental breakdowns, she's in black, she's in um s- like just darker tones, which I really liked as well. And the stalker is always in gray. He doesn't
Yeah,
change his outfit.
yeah, grays, blacks, darker blues. Like, yeah, it's the color. The coloring for this
Mm-hmm.
movie is brilliant. Yeah, like you see the bright poppy nature of the pop star, and then once you're dragged into kind of reality, or like the movie's version of reality, like obviously, you know, acting is still a pop kind of style profession, but in the movie it treats it as more like a whole new thing, right?
Yeah.
And the change in color is so pivotal in that. I was looking for the right word, pivotal. But also like just the sequences when she's at home, looking through the fan websites. It's just like, sure, story wise, it's great, but like they could have animated that differently if it was made today, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just everything feels so natural. Like one of the biggest compliments that I can give this film is that it feels like this could work just as well in live action because of the way that it's animated.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could do this movie in live action. I feel like if there's any anime live action adaptation you could do, it would probably be Perfect Blue.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that would undermine some of its more fantastical elements, like the entire chase sequence where she's chasing herself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could do that convincingly.
No, and during that chase sequence too, when the other version of her, the pop idol, is floating, she's a magical person pretty much, because that's what she imagines her as. And
Yeah,
even when you were talking about in her room, when she's on the computer late at night and all you see is the computer screen, and then but everything else is dark, and she's sitting there just reading the comments pretty much of what her past self did.
yeah, it's just beautifully done. And this film has one of my favorite shots from an animated film in it. There's it's also in the video on the channel, which is where she's in the bathtub and she's kind of face down in the bathtub. Just the way that the water is drawn and the reflections and like the ripples that come like away from her body, and like then the kind of not the reverse shot, but like when it goes into the water and we see her face. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and it totally reflects everything that's going on in with what she's thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so beautifully done. And I would say like this film is gorgeous. I don't think it's necessarily like the prettiest anime film ever.
But why would you want it to be pretty if it's about a mental state?
Exactly. Right. Like, you know, I think I'm so used to chatting up fellow film lovers who maybe don't appreciate anime as much as, or Japanese animation as much as they should, by talking about how almost every film is a masterpiece visually. And, you know, usually you're thinking like the Ghibli films. Like Ghibli, like every frame is a painting that you could put in a museum, right? Even I'm trying to think of the director Mamoru Hosoda, who did
Like,
blanking on the movie
Your
like
Name
Mirai.
and stuff like that.
Your Name is a completely different director. I want to see. I want to double check. This is going to look bad if I get it wrong, because these are some of my favorite movies. Makoto Shinkai is who I was thinking of, who did Your Name and Weathering with You, and the newest one, Suzume. And then Mamoru Hosoda is he was the one that did Summer Wars. I believe he also did Mirai. Yeah, Mirai, Belle. Those movies, like those ones, are also gorgeous, but they're not telling the same story that this is. This is like, you know, we keep making this comparison, right? But Perfect Blue feels like the 7 of anime films so far. Like it is the darkest. It's not the most violent. It does have violence in it. Don't get me wrong. Specifically, the sexual assault scene is very, again, like we said, it's hard to watch.
Yeah.
But like, it is just that darker story. Like even this director's other work, like Paprika, has dark moments in it, but it's not a dark film. You know, there's also like Tokyo Godfathers, which is a great movie that I don't think it's on the 250 for either site, but you should watch it at some point, which is about 3 homeless people who find a baby left on the street and essentially become its surrogate parents until they can find where to take it. And they're, you know, what I love about Satoshi Kon is his work is so varied. So you could go from Paprika, which is like an Inception-like action movie, with Tokyo Godfathers, which is like your drama, like if it was live action, totally an Oscar bait style film.
Mhm.
To this, which is your Seven, it is your Zodiac, it is like your psychological thriller that's just
Exactly.
darker and kind of, honestly, for someone who likes watching anime films and someone who doesn't watch them, it is really refreshing to watch.
It's
As
just
hard as it is to watch sometimes, but
as
like,
hard as it is to watch, it's just a different anime mentality. It's
mhm,
not it yeah, like you were saying, it's like the seven of anime. But with when I was watching this, I didn't have seven in mind at all when I was uh r- basically watching this. I
yeah,
was just thinking of real life. Like, because some people go through this not being like a pop star and idol, but those mental decisions that they have to make and how
mhm,
it might affect them if they don't take the time to think about it. So I was thinking about it as like as a patient, pretty much, is if this happened to me, yeah, I would be going through those struggles and stuff like that. But I would also have somebody there because she didn't have really have friends throughout this whole movie. She was kind of doing it by herself, which I
yeah.
think
Her assistant is
that's
basically her
like
best friend.
her best friend. But
Her
you
fellow
need
pop
to,
singers weren't really her friends either.
mm-mm,
Yeah,
like they just turned a cold shoulder to her,
yeah,
and uh, that's what's important about watching this movie is yes, you're going through shit at real life or when you see it in theaters and stuff like that, but there's always something that can get you out of it. And that's what I like to see at the end of the movie. It's a good ending. um she says this is real life. So, and that's what's really nice is yes, you can get down in the dumps sometimes, but at the end of your movie, just make sure that you're happy.
exactly. Yeah, and you know, it's one of those things. It's like I almost don't believe her when she says that.
Hmm.
Like, you
She
know,
went through all of that crap and then she goes, ah, this is my life. So it's like,
yeah,
okay, that's kind of, it was kind of off-putting, but I was like kind of
kind of leaves
happy
it
for her.
open, right?
Yeah.
Like, because
Hmm.
you could be, again, like, because this movie is inspirational, you kind of get a little bit of that Inception ending out of it, right? Like, is it actually reality, or has she
Hmm.
completely lost it, or is it reality?
Yeah,
And she's
exactly.
come out on top. It's very open, and I really appreciate the ending of this film because of that. Alrighty, Kevin. So this was my pick. It was your first time watching the movie. So what did you think about it? What was your final score? Some final thoughts? What do you got for me?
Final thoughts are, if you want to be curious about a non-Ghibli anime, you can watch this one. And if you want to get mind fucked, you can watch this one as well. Um, uh, Final thoughts going into this is it's a beautiful animation movie. Watch this when you're not down, though. Watch this in a good mental state.
Yeah,
Because this really will put you in a bad mental state if you
it'll
go into it.
at the very least it'll put you in a bad mood. Like
Yeah,
it's just it is a dark film. So
yeah, it's a
uh,
darker film. Just going into that, just remind yourself that. But I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. I'm gonna give it like a 90 out of 100. Will I watch it again? Yes, just to see like what things I've missed. And it was harder for me because I had it in subbed version, not dubbed version. So I was kind of reading and watching. So if I
yeah,
see a dub version, I'll probably watch it again just so I can look around in the backgrounds and stuff like that of this anime.
yeah. I've seen this one both ways, and I think I prefer the sub just
Okay.
because like I feel like with most anime films, like you can do it either way. Like it doesn't like
Hmm.
it doesn't take me out of watching it one way or the other. I think
Yeah.
like Ghibli movies I can watch both ways because I think
Hmm.
they're so fantastical that they could just naturally be in English.
Hmm.
Um, or a show example would be Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I can only watch that show in English because it takes place in America. So like it
Hmm.
doesn't make sense for it to be in Japanese for me, aside from it being a Japanese show. This one though, I feel like this is very close to reality, obviously except for some of the fantastical elements. So like I feel like I need to watch this one in Japanese because it's like a slice of Japanese kind of
culture,
but like life as well. So, but as far as my final thoughts goes, we actually covered this movie back on the original podcast, Drive Back, which should be here on the channel. And I think this movie is just nearly perfect. I do hold this movie up with movies like Seven and Zodiac. For people who are looking for a psychological thriller, something that you can really sink your teeth into with a deeper, more nuanced story, I always recommend Perfect Blue, even if they're not into anime, because it doesn't feel like any anime film either. It honestly feels like someone made something like Seven or Zodiac and decided to animate it. So, and that's for me is what's so special. I also gave this film a 4.5 out of 5 because I gave it a 96. This is one of my favorite movies, one of my top 150. So I highly recommend everyone watch this film. So the question now falls to you. What did you think of Perfect Blue? Hopefully it didn't put you in too bad of a mood. Go ahead and leave your comments down in the comment section down below, but remember to be respectful of one another. We are watching. Next week, we'll be covering the animated holiday film Klaus. So make sure to watch the film before next week so you aren't spoiled. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us here on YouTube and follow us on social media everywhere at Real Watchers. We also have our live stream that goes live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where me and our other co-host Adrian go over movie news, reviews, and so much other fun stuff. It's hard to keep a tag on everything we do. But also we have videos that go live here on the channel, so make sure to check those out. And thank you for letting us hit 100 subscribers. Thank you so much for that. And until next time, make sure to keep your eyes on the screen.